So I'm not sure if we may be expecting another person or two. It looks like it's filled up. So, and it is after 9, so we'll go ahead and get started. How many of you are planning to stay for both sessions today? How many are not sticking around for the second session? Okay, so the three of you, basically parts 1 and parts 2, I'm going to talk a little bit about just kind of the broad overview of how you create accessible documents, what that means, both in, well, we'll start actually with HTML, look at accessible web pages, because it's kind of the most accessible format, and we'll look at why that's true, what are some characteristics of HTML. And then we'll try to replicate what we can do in HTML in Word, and we'll talk about how to export from Word into PDF in a way that preserves the accessibility features that we've added to our Word document. So that's part 1. Part 2, we're going to look at PDFs that we get from other sources that aren't accessible by default necessarily. Maybe we don't know if they're accessible. We're going to look and try to figure out whether they're accessible, and just sort of step through a step-by-step workflow to look at different features of those PDFs to see if they're accessible, and if they're not, to fix those accessibility problems. So before we plunge into doing all that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about document accessibility, so we all sort of get a sense for what we're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, since our final goal is PDF, we're going to talk about PDF ultimately. It's helpful to know that there are 3 general types of PDFs. Those are, first of all, just an image. If you scan a document and save that as PDF, it saves it as just a picture of the document, so it's not actually a document. There's no actual text there. Therefore, for a screen reader user, that's the most inaccessible or the least accessible type of document. So the first step to fix that would be to actually convert that into text. And you can do that with Adobe Acrobat Pro, or you can do that with other tools that perform OCR, or optical character recognition. The second type is actually probably the most common type, is a document that you create in any sort of authoring tool, and then you print to PDF, or in some cases save as PDF, and it produces a PDF, but it doesn't provide any sort of structure to that PDF. Structure is a real key when it comes to accessibility. You know, those of you that were in the lectures yesterday, we talked a lot about headings, making sure that you got headings identified and at what level the headings are within the document, heading 1, heading 2, that sort of thing. Identifying lists as lists, identifying paragraphs as paragraphs, and very, very helpful for screen reader users to know what this is that's in front of them. Not just what the text says, but if it's a heading, they need to know it's a heading. So that structure is very important. And so a lot of PDFs don't have any sort of underlying structure. It's just text, a stream of text from top to bottom. And just imagine reading a document or having somebody read a document to you like that without pausing between sentences or anything like that. That's sort of the experience of having a document that has no structure. Also, PDFs historically were designed as visual means of delivering documents. So they weren't really designed to be read by machines. And so all of the stuff that makes documents readable today are add-ons to an otherwise visual medium. And as a result of that, there's no guarantee without structure that it's even going to be read in the right order. Text might be all scrambled up, and often is. So that's the second type. You might get a readable document, but it's not going to have the level of accessibility that you really need to make it a useful document. The third type is a tag PDF. And this has been around since Adobe 5, right around 2001 or thereabouts. This is correlated with the passage of Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, when the federal government suddenly had to make sure that all of its information technology was accessible. And they said, wow, we're not going to be able to use PDF anymore, we're going to have to find some other document format. And Adobe said, hold on, let's see if we can do something about accessibility of PDF. And so they introduced tagged PDF. So it's a type of PDF that has an underlying tagged structure that is very similar to HTML. And so that's the key, is in order to have an accessible PDF, you have to have those tags, and then those tags have to be the proper tags. So, how do you create a tagged, well-structured PDF? That's what we're going to explore in the 2 sessions today. First of all, you can start with a tool that supports tagged PDF. And here's a list of the tools that do. There might be a few others, but these are the only ones that have sort of been verified and confirmed. Most of the major Office suites, Microsoft Office, OpenOffice, LibreOffice, WordPerfect actually does, although not very well. Lotus Symphony and InDesign all produce tagged PDF, but not necessarily by default. You have to save properly in order to produce a tagged PDF. And so we're gonna walk through how you do that in Microsoft Office. There are a few basic rules that you need to follow as you're creating a document. You need to use heading styles, and we'll walk through all these so you'll get a real sense for what we're talking about. So you've got your headings very clearly communicated within the document. Other built-in structural features like lists and tables, you need to use the built-in features within your authoring tool, within Microsoft Word, to create lists, to create tables. If you have images, you need to add alternate text to that describes the images. You need to define the language, especially if the document contains foreign language content. So screen readers are not smart enough yet to identify when a language changes. So if you've got more than one language in a document, then you need to identify that this is English, this is Spanish, and then screen readers are actually multilingual enough that they can switch on the fly to the appropriate pronunciation engine for a new language. And then the final step, you need to save and export to a tagged PDF. If you miss any of those steps, or if you get your PDF from some other source and you don't have access to the original, then that's okay, because you can add accessibility to any PDF, no matter how inaccessible it is to start with, using Adobe Acrobat Pro. And so that, again, is what we're going to be looking at in the second half of today. Okay, that's my entire slideshow. Any questions so far? Okay, let's look at an accessible HTML document. And I'm going to start up, I've got JAWS installed on this computer. Which is still the most popular screen reader out there, although there are several others that people use.
JAWS for Windows is ready. Left parody : example PDFs example. Files for Zoo Document Accessibility Workshop - Windows Internet Explorer. Files for Zoo Document Accessibility Workshop. Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus.
Explorer is not responding. That ever happened to anybody?
Google Chrome is usually more reliable.
Yeah, Google Chrome though doesn't work with JAWS, unfortunately. Let's try restarting. There are several screen readers out there now. JAWS is has kind of established itself as the
Windows Internet Explorer,
main
new
screen
tab
reader that
page,
people use, at least in the
notification
United
requires
States.
response. Press Alt plus N, your last.
But it costs over $1,000, and then upgrades cost a couple $100 with each upgrade. And so there are other options that people are starting to turn to. NVDA is a free screen reader, and it does a lot. It's a very capable free screen reader, and so a lot of people are starting to switch over to that.
What's it called?
NVDA stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access. Macs come with VoiceOver built in, so that also is free if you're a Mac user, and it's a very capable screen reader. Chrome actually has Chrome Box. Google has developed their own screen reader, which Michelle and I were talking earlier that neither of us really like it, and it has a very, very tiny percent of the market share. It's good for a few things, but it really isn't a fully capable screen reader at this point. Okay.
Alt tab, example PDFs, example, blank page dash Windows Internet Explorer, address insert. Chapters 8-10.
Okay. So this is a course, a fictitious course syllabus, one we developed just for demonstration purposes. And there are lots of things that we want to point out with this document. First of all, we do have a clear visual heading structure. There's a main heading at the top, Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus. You've got several secondary headings that are all the same level: textbook, course objectives, class schedule, and grades. So in terms of how you mark this up in HTML, this is where the heading tags come in. So we would want to use H1 for the main heading, H2 for the secondary headings. There's a bulleted list of 3 items under the course objectives. So we want to make sure that's marked up as a list. All of this markup plays a critical role in making this accessible for screen reader users. We also have a banner up at the top. That's actually a graphic that says Accessible University. It's the logo. And so we want to make sure that we provide alternate text, just a short description that provides access to that for screen reader users. And so when a screen reader user arrives at any page, they all have different strategies for how they go about exploring the page. But the most popular strategy is to rely on headings and to hope that the developer has added headings appropriately, and then they can just hit the H key.
Grades heading level 2.
And I'm down at the bottom, I'm going to hit H again.
Wrapping the top, Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus heading level 1.
Then I've wrapped to the top, and I see that the first heading in the document is a heading level 1, Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus. So I can just keep hitting H to cycle through the headings and explore kind of the outline of the document.
Textbook heading level 2. Course objectives heading level 2. Class schedule heading level 2. Grades heading level 2. Wrapping the top, Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus heading level 1.
So now I have a full sense of how this document is organized and structured, what the headings are, what the outline is. Maybe when I'm actually after the course objectives, and so I know exactly where that is now, so I can hit H a couple times to get to it.
Textbook heading level 2. Course objectives heading level 2.
And then I can use my arrow key to drill down into the section to find out what the course objectives are.
List of 3 items.
And the first thing it says is this is a list of 3 items. So then I can proceed to read those items. If it was a list of 30 items, maybe I'm in a hurry and I don't want to read all those right now, and so I might, abandon this task and go into something else. So that's why it's important that that be a list, and the screen reader knows it's a list and it is able to communicate that to the user in a way that is meaningful. If I jump down to the, let's go down to the bottom. There's actually, it's hard to see, but there's a sentence down at the bottom that's in French. And so I'll show off JAW's ability to switch between language engines.
Ce programme est également disponible en français sur demande.
So actually has a pretty good French accent. And this is marked up with the lang attribute in HTML. It basically says this paragraph has language equal French. And And so that's how the screen reader knows, okay, this is a French paragraph, I need to pronounce it in French. If we didn't have that identified as a French paragraph, it would read that same text as if it was English, which would mean it would butcher it. It would, not sound at all like French. It would sound like somebody who has no idea that that's French trying to pronounce it. So identifying language again for multilingual document is critical. So while we're down here, I'm going to go up into this table down at the bottom. It's a fairly complex table, and then we've got nested columns that identify the different percentage, the weighting that goes into the final grades. You get exams 1, 2, and final, projects 1, 2, and final. That's actually a very hard thing for screen readers to figure out. We can visually track the columns. We've got lines, and we can understand all those relationships. But screen readers have a very difficult time understanding relationships in a table like this. And so HTML provides the markup that's necessary to explicitly associate header cells with the cells inside the table that that those headers apply to. So we've got every cell and header combination explicitly identified within the table. And what happens then?
Blank. Table end. 15%.
Is once we get into the table, and right now I'm in the bottom right cell, I can move around with table navigation keys.
Projects 2, 10%. Projects 1, 10%. Column 5. Exams final, 20%. Column 4.
And as I'm moving through the table, it's able to not just tell me the value in the current cell, but also all the headers that apply to that cell. And so no matter how huge and unwieldy the table is that I'm in, I understand those relationships, and the screen reader is able to communicate where I am and what this data means. So that's kind of an overview, and then I didn't show you the image, but let me jump up to the top with Control Home.
Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus. Graphic Accessible University.
So it just says graphic, and then it reads the alternate text. In this case, I just chose alternate text that replicates the text that's in the logo. Optionally, you could say Accessible University logo. It's hard to see, but there's actually a lot of symbolism in this logo, different icons that represent different aspects of accessibility. And probably in an Introduction to Physics course syllabus, you would have no need to describe the logo itself. So it's really, superfluous information. But if this was a document about sort of the evolution of the university logo or how the logo came to be, then that same image could have a very different alternate text. You would probably, in that context, want to describe what the logo looks like. So, so the decision about how to describe an image is always one that depends on context, what it is you're trying to communicate. So this is an example of a document in HTML. HTML really, again, it's sort of the pinnacle. It's the most accessible format. And so in a perfect world, actually, delivering content through HTML is the best way to go. People can open it in any browser, on any operating system. They don't have to have additional software like Microsoft Word or Adobe Reader to read it. Screen readers do wonderfully with it. Other assistive technologies do really well with it. So if you can create a document in HTML, do that. But the reality is we are creating documents in other formats for various reasons. And so we want to figure out how to come as close to this as we possibly can. There's some things we can't do even in Word that HTML can do. But we want to come as close as we can so that our Word document is as accessible as it can be. And ultimately, if we export to PDF, we want that PDF to be as accessible as it can be. So, any questions before we start playing around with Word? Okay.
Unload and enter.
So, just some practical things. We have a file that I think was sent out by email to you all. Did anybody not get the files we're going to be working with? Okay, so a few hands go up. So everything you need is at staff.washington.edu/TFT. And this actually applies to everybody because there are a few new files that didn't get emailed that I stuck up here too for the second half. So staff.washington.edu/TFT/downloads. And that should give you a downloads page. The PowerPoint slides for I'm doing a media session this afternoon on video accessibility, so if you're interested in that, it has a lot of links in it, so I've provided that. Feel free to download that as well. But the
Can
stuff
you write that up on the board, please?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you write that up on the board?
Yeah.
So we can see it.
Hard to see.
I'm missing some stuff.
Staff dot Washington dot edu slash my initials TFT slash downloads. So probably just so we're all on the same page, it would be helpful to create a folder on your desktop called Accessibility Workshop, and then right-click on each of these files and save target as, and save them into that folder. I also want to share another webpage with you, and that is uw.edu/accessibility. And you could actually stop there and explore, but I'll go one step further, and that is /documents. So this is the page that we provide for our own faculty and staff just to help them understand the same things we're talking about today. And down at the bottom of that documents page, there are several scenarios that have links. So there's creating accessible documents in Microsoft Word, creating accessible PDFs from Microsoft Word, creating accessible PDFs from InDesign, fixing inaccessible PDFs using Adobe Acrobat Pro, and then one that deals with PDF forms. And so we're going to be basically following the steps, so using these as a resource and following the steps that are on these pages. So for today, for this first session, creating accessible documents in Microsoft Word is one we want to look at. Okay, does everybody have the files downloaded into a folder? Anybody that needs a little more time? Okay, helps you. All right. So you're needing to relocate? Is that?
You can keep going.
Okay. Okay, so for starters, let's open up syllabus.docx, which is the Microsoft Word file. And as you'll discover, that is the same file, basically, that we just looked at in HTML. This is the Word version. So the first thing we want to do, yes?
Sorry, where was that?
This is syllabus.docx. It's one of those files that
Oh,
we
one of those.
just downloaded.
It's there,
PDF.
but it's not in our, it wasn't sent to us in the folders. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
in the folders is the PDF of it.
Oh, okay.
So I think we all have to go to that site to get that.
So yeah, you have to go to the staff.washington.edu site to get that. Once you have this, then let's start with the image. When you click on the image and then right click, you get a context menu that pops up, and down at the bottom of that there is format picture. And if you click on that, then you get some options for formatting the picture over on the right. Let me ask this. Back in your offices, do you all have this same version of Microsoft Word? No? What version? This is 2013, I believe, in Windows. What versions do you guys have? You know, kind of different.
Early.
So 2000, some people have 2010. So, anybody have earlier than that? Any 2007? Okay. So in 2010, when you go to format picture, you'll get a dialog box instead of this panel over here. But it's basically the same options. And what you want to do is look around and try to find an option for alt text, because it's there. In 2013, it's this little, the third icon from the left is for layout and properties, and that has an option for alt text. And when you click on that, you'll discover that there are two options for alt text. There's title and there's description. And there didn't used to be. Back in 2007 and earlier, there was just one field for alternate text. So it's real simple. You go there and type in your description and you're done. Now you got two fields. So the question a lot of people have is, which field do I use? And the answer is, use description. Does anybody want to know why, or is it, are you satisfied with that?
Can I just ask a real dumb question? So I do a right click, I get to format picture, I'm supposed to click on that, right?
Yep.
And when I do that, then you have to go to alt text. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. There are no dumb questions. So if there are inquiring minds, the title field, although Microsoft probably has good intentions with having this separated into a short description and a large description, it's not well supported by assistive technologies or by, if you export to other formats. Title just doesn't survive very often. So it's best to just use description. That's the most reliably supported across tools. So forget that that title field is even there for now. So what should you enter for a description? The idea with alternate text is you want to provide access to the content of the image. So whatever it is that you're communicating, that's what needs to be communicated to somebody who can't see the image. So as we saw with the HTML version of this, Accessible University, just providing access to that text. That's the most critical piece, and that may be all that really is necessary. If you feel that it's important that that's a logo, then Accessible University logo would be good. Yes?
So for other images and documents that were,
just like pictures, would you actually describe the picture, mountain range, or is that the idea?
Yeah, and again, there's a bit of an art to it, but it's, you know, whatever, if you got a picture of a mountain range, what is it you're trying to communicate with this picture? You know, if it's a geology course and it's important that that mountain range consists of this certain type of granite, then that needs to be, you know, mentioned. If it's you know, just showing, you know, Mount Hood, and it's, you know, intended to sort of communicate how wonderful Portland is, then, you know, you would describe something about sort of the beauty of the natural scenery. So it really just depends on what you're after, and you want to keep it short. So there's sometimes a tendency to get verbose to the point where it becomes burdensome. So you imagine a screen reader's reading a document, they can't capture an image. You don't want to bog them down too much with so much detail that it takes forever to move on to the next thing. So, you know, short and sweet, but trying to capture the essence of whatever it is that you're communicating with that. Yes?
Another question. I'm not very familiar with these readers. Do they know when to pause between sentences or paragraphs? Because it does sound actually quite burdensome to listen to that.
Yeah, if it's, and it pays attention to punctuation and that kind of thing. So as long as your document is well punctuated.
Okay, so it wouldn't make any difference if you put 2 spaces after a period or 1 space. It's
No.
just going to go right kind of through it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions about alternate text?
So
Yeah,
once you enter it, it just stays?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Is that true? I'm not a 2013 user, but
I just went and checked mine and it was there.
yeah, so there's no save option or anything.
Okay.
So headings. This top heading, Introduction to Physics Course Syllabus, that is a, visually, we know that's a main heading because it's bigger, it's bolder, but it is just bigger and bolder. If we look at the ribbon across the top and all those different styles that you can use to stylize things, our goal with headings is to have the heading 1 marked up using the heading 1 style. And so there should be a heading 1 style up there, and we would want to click that in order to change this big bold center text to heading 1. Now if we do that, we're going to discover that that changes the style a little bit. And maybe we don't like that. We don't like the built-in heading 1. And so what we can do is right-click on heading 1, on the heading 1 button, and update heading 1 to match selection. And that will take the existing style of our heading in the document and apply that to the heading 1 style. At least that's what it should do. Is that what it did? Yeah. Okay, so now that is big, bold, centered. It still looks exactly the same, but it's marked up as a heading 1. And those styles, those built-in heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4 styles are what screen readers use in Word to know that this is a heading and to jump, from heading to heading and do that whole outline thing. Yes?
So I noticed under styles you also have title and subtitle. So that's not used by screen readers?
No.
Okay.
And that actually, it has not historically been used. Somebody was telling me recently that I think JAWS may actually support title now as if it were a heading 1, but I haven't confirmed that. So, and that would be recent versions of JAWS. So to support legacy users, then I would just stick with heading 1. So then the other headings.
Can I just add one little piece that I think is important?
Uh-huh.
And that is that you only ever have one heading 1 in a document. You never have heading 1 used again. Can you say that for the others?
Yeah, so heading 1, and I usually don't say never, because there might be some rare circumstance where you've got sort of, documents are like twin documents inside a document kind of thing. But that's just being afraid of never. But she says never use more than one H1 in a document, heading one. So most documents, 99.9% of documents, will just have one main heading. And then you've got subheadings underneath that. But there's one main heading that's kind of like the title, the main heading of the document. So all these other headings, they're all visually, we can tell that they're the same level. And so those are all going to be heading 2s. And so the heading 2 format, if we go in to the first one and update heading 2 to match selection after we've selected textbook, and then go through and select each of the other heading 2s, and all we have to do then is click, because we've already redefined heading 2. And just change each of these to a heading level 2. A benefit of doing that for you, the author, many of you may know this already, but if you're not used to using styles, suppose this is a really long document, 60 pages. At some point, you decide you want to change the look of heading 2s. Now that you've marked them all up using the style, all you have to do is go in to modify, right-click on your heading 2 button and modify it. And you could, let's say we wanted to change the color to red. Now every heading 2 in the document is red. And so that was so much easier to do than to go in and change every one individually. So it really, using the styles that are built into Word really benefits us as authors as well as screen reader users. Tables. Any questions about headings before we move on? Okay. Tables, we have 2 tables here. One that is relatively simple under class schedule, and one that is more complex. I'm going to change the color back. So this is one of those areas where Word actually falls short. That the level of accessibility markup that we need for full accessibility of tables is only possible in HTML and actually in PDF. PDF provides the tags that we need, but Word does not for the complex table. For a simple table, we can do what we need to do in Word. So let's start with that. And the thing that needs to happen in Word with a simple table is the headings need to be identified as headings or headers, they're column headers. So topic, reading assignment, the screen reader needs to know that that's a heading row. Those are column headers, and then it can use that information to communicate to users. So in order to identify that as a header row, we select the row, right-click on the row, and then from the context menu, we select Table Properties. That brings up a Table Properties dialog with a few tabs going across the top. If we click on the Row tab, then there's a checkbox that says Repeat as Header Row at the top of each page. So the idea with that checkbox is actually for really big tables, you got a table that's going to span multiple pages when you print it out, then it's desirable to have that header row reappear at the top of the next page, so visually people can keep track of what the column headers are. So it just so happens that because Word isn't using that to identify that this is a table row, then screen readers can latch onto that information and use it in a way that's advantageous to their users. So check that box, select OK, and this table then will now be accessible to screen reader users. Yes?
In the design view in Word, when that table is selected, there's a option at the far left that says, check, it says header row. And that's whether or not this repeat as header row is selected. So is that the same thing? Is that marking up the header row as well, or only this option that we just talked about?
That's a good question. It doesn't seem to be correlated if we uncheck it.
We
Yeah,
uncheck
so
it, yeah.
I would have to play with that. That I think is a new
Okay.
feature in 2013, and I haven't looked to see whether checking that has the same effect. It's easier to just check that.
Yeah, it's a little more really.
Yeah. So that's
Okay.
definitely something to look into. Yes.
There's an alt text field for the table. Would we fill that out as well?
No. And I'm not sure why that. Are you seeing that in the table properties? Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think that would be supported by screen readers. Because alt text traditionally is just for things that don't have text already. So for images. So I guess maybe the idea would be if your table is so complex that it's not going to be readable and you want to provide some alternative that screen readers would read instead, where you can sort of describe what that table is trying to communicate. But I don't think it's supported by screen readers. And I'd go out on a limb and say it most assuredly is not supported by all screen readers, even if there might be one or two that do support it. So the complex table then is the problem, that we can identify those two rows there as header rows, but what needs to happen, what happens in HTML is every cell has attributes that identify which headers go with this cell. And so there's a lot more markup behind the scenes in an HTML table that you can't replicate in Word. And so for a table that has nested columns, nested rows, that sort of complexity, then your choices are to try to break that down maybe into a couple of different simple tables that don't have nested columns, nested rows. Think about other ways you can present this that might be simpler, and maybe that would be simpler for everybody. Or if you really need to have this level of complexity in the table, then it's better to produce that in another format. Either produce it in HTML and then link to it, or PDF, again, does support the HTML level of accessible markup. That means post-production work. So you exported this document to PDF, and then you have to go into the PDF and work on that table to make it accessible. Yes?
So you're saying there that we could just do, instead of doing this, it makes more sense just to just say homework and then exam 1 as a column, exam 2 as a column, exam 3 as a column, and then it would be able to read it.
Right,
And
yeah.
Project 1, project 2,
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, so the complexity is when you've got multiple headings, multiple headers that apply to a single cell. So, yeah, so that would be a perfect way to do that.
Or it wouldn't have to be in a table.
True enough, yeah.
What if, because I'm thinking about how in my syllabus, it usually goes across. Can it read that? I mean, it would usually not even necessarily be in a table, be.
Yeah, you could just
You
have it.
could, you could
Can it
say
read that?
that, like, for example, homework might be a heading 3 and it's worth 15%. And then exams and projects are also heading 3s, and under exams you've got exam 1 to the final, and you give the percentage for each one of those. And it's just listed maybe as bullets or individual items and then go into your projects and list those individually. So it would be more vertical rather than horizontal, but it's the information. So that's the important thing to get across.
Yeah. Yeah. So and this is just an example table. There's some cases, your research paper where you've got lots and lots of data, a big table. And so sometimes it's harder to present information not in a table, but a lot of times you can present a complex table, break it down, and present it in multiple simple tables.
So,
Yes.
sorry, just another question. So with tables, you only right-click and use the table properties to define the row as headings. You wouldn't actually highlight the text and change it to a heading.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of the terminology gets a little confusing too. These are column headers, not headings. So header, heading gets a little confusing. But the other thing is the French paragraph down there. Does anybody teach foreign language or have foreign language content in your? Yes. Okay. So with this sort of thing, you need to identify the language of the document first of all, and you can do that with nothing highlighted or with everything highlighted. Then you go into review, and under language, set proofing language. So it's not the most obvious location, but it has to do with spell check. And so this is already identified as English.
So could you start from the beginning on that? I missed the first step, so.
Yep, so this is, what we're doing first off is we are defining the document of the language of the entire document. So, so we have nothing selected, or just to be sure, you could actually select everything, which is Control A. You can't see that I did that, but Control A selects everything. Then you go to the Review tab up on the ribbon, and Language, set Proofing Language.
I'm not seeing that.
Really?
Have to have the review.
tab.
Does your tab otherwise look like mine?
It's translate has language. Maybe it's language. Oh.
It's like
So you have to hit
six
the
over
language
from the
tab
left, six
You hit the
up.
Review
Language
tab,
toolbar.
and then the language.
and set proofing language.
Yeah.
So this is for
Try it.
It doesn't.
Oh, you're on Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different place.
Do you see it? So go to language. And then right click on it. Right. Actually, you don't need the right click. Just click on it. Then it says set
Okay.
proofing language. Right. And you just click on it.
Language. Okay. Thank you.
So now it's the whole.
Try it.
You can have it all selected.
Using help is good.
Yeah, I mean, it'll still probably read it as English until it finds your French. You'll have to switch on that later. That's my understanding.
Language.
But I just selected. Just
Yeah, so for Mac users, it's under Tools, Language. So you set the language of the document to English, then you do the same thing with French paragraph. Select the French paragraph, and then go through that same process, but select French. And I think it may give you a choice of French, doesn't it? So it's either French or Canadian French. So that's essentially it for Microsoft Word, kind of the basics of the types of things you can do. Again, I didn't specifically talk about table or lists, but maybe I should mention that when we're creating a list, use the list button that's on the ribbon to create a list, And if you don't like those little bullets and you want to customize them, you actually can do that within this list feature. So it provides you the ability to define a new bullet, and there are all sorts of things you can do to customize the look of the list, but it needs to be a list using that list feature in order for screen readers to recognize it as a list.
So, how do you do
And
that?
the list is the same as highlight making it bullet. It's the same as.
It automatically makes it a list when you make it a bullet?
When you use the list button to create a list, up on the ribbon there's a little button.
It's
Oh,
called.
bulleted list, it says bulleted list. It doesn't, in this one, it doesn't call it that.
Okay. I
Yeah.
didn't see it,
Okay.
that it was called lists, it's on under
So-
paragraphs.
So the,
those preset lists for
the thing not to do is to just type text and then take an image and place it in front of each item. That's what I've seen people do sometimes. And what you have then is just paragraphs with an image in front of each paragraph. It's not really a list. And in which case screen readers tend to say things like list of 3 items, and give you that additional bit of information that is helpful as you're navigating through the list.
So once this document is saved and it's final, like this is only applicable to Word, and uploading a Word document to the internet, it doesn't apply to once you convert it to Adobe, then you would have to restart. Is
No,
that correct,
well,
or-
these guys will have to restart. Those of you that are on Windows, that's actually what we're going to talk about next. So once you have added accessibility features, you've created a Word document, and presumably once you sort of make this a habit, then you don't have to go back in and add anything. You just always use headings, always add alternate text images. And then to export, you go to File, Save As, 2013 is a little different again. File, Export in 2013, and Save As in 2010. And then we want to create a PDF. And before you complete the process, let's just kind of do this together because there's some things that need to happen. So when you get to this point where you're in a Publish as PDF or XPS dialog, pause, and we'll look at some things together. So for Mac users, you can save as PDF, but it does not preserve your accessibility features. Everything that you have just done, all the headings, all the alt text, table markup, all that is lost. And so somehow or another you have to get from this document you've created to an accessible tag PDF. The 2 workarounds that I have are to open it up in Windows. So if you got access to a Windows machine, then just that last step needs to happen in Windows. Or open it up in OpenOffice, or actually LibreOffice is better than OpenOffice at preserving fonts and other things. But that's free, so you can download that, have that on your Mac, open up your Word doc in LibreOffice, and then save as PDF from there, and it will create an accessible tag PDF that has all the accessibility features. Or just use LibreOffice instead of Microsoft. You have a puzzled expression.
Well, what I'm thinking is, I teach a course, I'm loading stuff up into D2L, and I'm starting to wonder if there's not somebody who can facilitate this or help me with it at Disability Service or OIT, because I'm starting to feel like it's becoming a lot of work. You have to have all these workarounds. It doesn't seem very practical in a way for a Mac user to do all this. You have to get extra software you've got to download.
Yeah.
services the
The
university has.
place to contact on campus would be OAI. Oh, sorry, I don't know. It's just
No, that's okay.
Yeah, no, the place to contact would be OAI, the Office of Academic Innovation.
Okay.
We're hiring an accessibility expert. We have a course builder on staff at the moment who is trained in accessibility, and we're there to help with any D2L support.
Who do I contact at OIA to get in touch with them? Just the
Samad
main number?
Hinton would be
Okay.
a good person to start. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. It does seem burdensome, but that might be because it's new, and that it's, yeah, I wish that that Mac would just do everything that Windows did and we'd be set, but once you kind of get set up and sort of figure out what the workflow is, then it really, per document, it's about 30 additional seconds to go through that extra step. So, and that's, I switched to Mac as kind of my primary machine a few years ago, and that was, an inconvenience, but I do all my production on Mac, and every time I have to do that extra step, I think, wow, I really hope they fix this when they come out with the new Office for Mac, which is supposed to happen sometime, maybe even this year. But until they fixed it, then we get that extra step to jump. Okay, so is everybody here in Windows? Okay, so if we click on Options at this point, the little Options button, I'm going to look and see what the options are. There is one especially critical option that says Document Structure Tags for Accessibility. Kind of an oddly phrased checkbox. But we've just learned that tags and structure are important. Accessibility is obviously important. We want to make sure that's checked, and it is checked by default. So it probably is checked, but you just want to make sure. You also have an option to minimize the size, and who wouldn't want to have a smaller PDF, right? But if you check that, then that actually unchecks the accessibility checkbox. And so, but you can check it back. So normally that'll be checked and you'll be fine, but if you're going to minimize, then go into options, and ultimately before the last step before you save, make sure that document structure tags for accessibility is checked. And what that will do, if you're intent on minimizing the size, is it will create a fairly minimum document. Initially, it removes absolutely everything that's unessential, and it judges accessibility to be unessential. And then when you put accessibility back, it just adds a little bit of size to the document, but not much. You still have a much smaller file than you would have otherwise. Then you're ready to publish.
Could you talk about the other options there? There's publish what document showing markup. What would that mean? And what about the create bookmarks? And then finally, I read some things about the PDF-A. Is that a new standard, or in the options window where you did the document structure tag?
Yeah, let me get back there. I honestly don't know what all of the options are, but bookmarks actually can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Let's see, where's that?
Well, it's under the options again.
Oh.
When you're saving, save.
But that's where I
Export.
am now. Is it in this dialog or somewhere else?
Right after,
It looks, yeah,
It's
I
right
think that's
after
right. Yeah.
publish what? It's right,
There's,
it says include non-printing information.
Oh, create bookmarks using headings. It's grayed out for some reason.
Yeah. Yours is grayed out.
Yeah.
Oh, mine.
So I don't know why. Other than my document has gotten all screwed up now. I've got bullets everywhere. But but that's for a longer document. I would use bookmarks for one page. I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
But a longer document, that's helpful for everybody to navigate.
Right.
And then you've got multiple means of navigation. Headings are great, but bookmarks just give multiple means. And so one area where bookmarks are especially helpful is if you've got like a book that has chapters, and then users can navigate through the bookmarks from chapter to chapter to chapter, and then within a chapter they can navigate through headings. One example of that. But yeah, bookmarks definitely are a good idea. PDF/A is actually, I believe that's not the accessibility standard.
Oh.
That is it's an archival standard that may or may not be useful. There is a PDF accessibility standard, but this, I'm not sure whether Word by default produces a document that complies with that or not. It's a relatively new standard for ensuring that PDFs have full accessibility built in. So go ahead and save this if you haven't already in your accessibility workshop folder. And so then you'll have a syllabus.pdf file that you created. And it should open up automatically in Adobe Acrobat. Maybe Adobe Acrobat Pro. Did that happen for everybody?
For mine, Pro.
Seems to have happened for me.
So is there a way for you when you're looking at a document to see that it is structured properly?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's part two. Although we have a few minutes, so we can actually get into that for the people
Yeah,
there.
show us.
Any questions before we plunge in?
What about forms? Things that need to be filled out.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, because we use a lot of them, they're on our website, and just thinking of what they look like and how they're all arranged in the table, it just sounds like an accessibility nightmare.
Yeah.
Is it maybe just easier just to tear them apart and make them just a big, long, simple, vertical text file with?
That would certainly be easier, and it might be easier for everybody. I know in higher education in general, there are really awful forms. That, a lot of them have been around forever, and some have been digitized, but it's like a digital version of a really old form that's evolved over time. So instead of redesigning the form, they just try to squeeze in some new fields. So
And
you're going to be around for the second half?
yeah.
So it's possible to make. We're not going to get in great depth because it's a whole 4-hour workshop in and of itself. But you can make an interactive form with Acrobat Pro. It's got the tools to do that, and it's got the tools to do that accessibly. The key with forms is that whenever you add a form field, you have to have a label that is explicitly connected to that. So a screen reader user who is filling out a form field needs to know what they're supposed to enter into that field. And just having a word like first name somewhere separate from the field but not explicitly attached, that's not going to work, because visually we may be able to see that, okay, this prompt goes with this field, but a screen reader user is not going to have that same association.
Hello, we're here to fix the projector.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Purple.
Yeah. So can I keep working while you talk while you do that?
Keep on
Okay.
going.
Yes.
Just had a quick question about where in the Mac the reading software is. I assume it's under dictation and speech, which is where that will read. You said that it's built into Macs.
Voiceover. It's under Universal Access, I think.
Okay.
If you go to the forget my Mac.
System preferences.
System preferences,
And then
Universal Access. Then you'll
Accessibility.
find. Yeah.
Accessibility. Oh, voiceover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a learning curve, so you have to it's got some tutorials you can walk through to figure out how it works. So let's spend a couple minutes just kind of looking at what you can do in Acrobat Pro for the benefit of those who are going to be leaving us. This is where this resource that we've developed is particularly helpful. Back over here at uw.edu/accessibility/documents. Fixing inaccessible PDFs using Adobe Acrobat Pro. If you click on that, then we have a checklist of 8 different things that you can look at, both to assess whether your PDF is accessible and to fix things. Acrobat Pro is required, and I think that is widely available here. Hopefully that's true. You all have access to it. This was another one of those things when Section 508 was passed. Adobe added accessibility to PDFs. They also added the tools that you need to create accessible PDFs to their higher-end product, because they knew there was going to be a market for it. And so you have to have Acrobat Pro in order to do a lot of the things we're going to do. But the first of those is, does the document have text? And you can do this, looking at the document you produced. You know it has text because you produced it, in Word. But you can just try selecting some text. And if you can select text, then there is actual text there. A lot of times with a scanned image, you'll also see little, pieces of dust and stuff that get scanned. And so that usually is a clue that it's not actually text as well. If it's not text, as it shows in the workflow, then you would have to go to Tools, Recognize Text, and then you could perform OCR, or optical character recognition, on it, and it would actually convert, it would do its best to convert the picture of text into text. And things that it didn't have a lot of confidence about, it would sort of walk you through reviewing what it came up with to see if it's accurate, and if not, then you would type in the corrections. So this isn't something to leave up to users to do. Provide them with an image and expect that, well, they've got the tools that they need to convert it themselves, because there are going to be errors, and if a person can't see the text, then they're not going to be able to fix the errors. Okay, so the next thing, you're sure that this document has text. Is it tagged? Is the next question. Referring back over here to our workflow. And to find that out, you can do Control-D in Windows or Command-D on a Mac. And that brings up document properties. And in the lower left corner of the document properties dialog, there's this field, Tag PDF. Yes or no? If it says yes, then you have a tagged document. So you've got that foundation, that structure that you need for accessibility. So that's great. Doesn't guarantee that your document is accessible, because there's some other things you have to check, make sure the structure is good. But the fact that it's tagged means that you're half the way there, or at least part of the way there. If it's not tagged, then you need to tag it. And Acrobat Pro provides the tools that you need to do that. So there are a couple of tool sets available in Acrobat Pro. If you click again on Tools in the upper right, you see all these tools that Adobe provides. Tools for pages, content forms, the action wizard. This forms tool is where you would go to add interactive form fields to your document. There also is an accessibility tool, but it might not be there by default. And in this case, it's not, so we have to add it. We do that by going to View, Tools, Accessibility. That then adds an accessibility tool over here to our toolkit, and it should stay there. So next time you log into Acrobat Pro, you'll have that accessibility tool. The other thing that we'll be getting into and working with is over here on the left side. So you've got tools over on the right, and you've got tools over on the left that are represented by these little icons. And there's the one that we need over here on the left is a tag viewer. And it doesn't show up by default either. But if we go to View, Show/Hide, Navigation Panes, Tags. So that's View, Show/Hide, Navigation Panes, Tags. Then that puts a little luggage tag over on the far left. And that gives us access to our tag structure. And we can click into that and actually see the tags that are underneath this document that we've created. How many of you know a little bit about HTML? Okay, about half the, looks like the right side, my right side is the HTML side. So it's fairly straightforward. And those that know HTML, this tag structure within a PDF is very similar. It's actually a lot of the same tags: H1, H2 for different levels of headings, P for paragraph, L for list is a little bit different, but it's just L for list. Table tags. And if you drill into this tree, you'll see a structure that is really similar to HTML. So what we're going to do in the second half is play around with these tools and walk through some example PDFs and get a better sense for how to use them and how to evaluate and fix PDFs. So any questions then about what we've done so far, getting to this point, working with Word and creating PDFs from Word? Okay, well the advertised start time for part 2 is 10:30, I believe, so we'll take a little break. And if you're a person that prefers plunging through, then I'm happy to answer any questions